This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1.
This is the Pro Audio Suite, a podcast for audio and voiceover professionals. Your hosts, Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone in Chicago, Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Sound Sydney, from LA, George Whittam, the tech to the VO stars, and myself, Andrew Peters, voice talent and home studio guy from Melbourne. Now, thanks to Rode microphones, let's get on with the show. Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. This week we have a very special guest coming in from Paris. It's Thomas Thiriez, who is the creator of TwistedWave, which I'm sure most of the people listening to this will be quite familiar with, including myself. The first question I've got for you to get the ball rolling, Thomas, is what is your background that led you to create a DAW?
I have studied signal processing and computer science, and when I was at the university, I spent most of my time programming in front of my PC. That's when I had the idea to write a sound editor. When I graduated, I started working at a company where we did 3D graphics, so nothing related to sound. But after about 10 years, I went back to my initial project and completed it and started selling it in 2007. And that's how TwistedWave was born.
Wow. It's just it's an unusual thing to do when there's like Pro Tools and Steinberg and, you know, Nuendo. Like there's so many DAWs around. What market were you targeting TwistedWave to?
I had not even heard about Pro Tools at the time. I did not know who my competitors were, and I wanted to make something that I would like to work on. I did not think too much about it.
That's really interesting.
I think the beauty of it is it's simpler than a lot of the Pro Tools and Nuendos and whatnot. So for all the people that aren't using so many other features and making rap albums or whatnot, maybe fits the bill better.
Yes, I know people like very much that it's very easy to use and very easy to get started with.
Yeah, that is a huge advantage for the voiceover actors. I mean, this software was brought to my attention by Bo Weaver, and I think it might go back as far as 2007 that he discovered it. And he got in the ear of your into your ear early on, didn't he?
Yes, it's him that told me that voiceover actors were a huge market. I didn't think too much about it, but it appears to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, he saw that this software was fulfilling a niche that wasn't really being filled very well. You know, there was other simple softwares out there, but none of them were very well designed or well thought out. And, you know, he obviously saw something in this program, and so glad that he did, because if he hadn't discovered it, we wouldn't all be using it today, to be honest. Very unlikely anyway.
Yeah, I think for the first time he contacted me, he told me he was using SoundForge on PC and he wanted something to use on his Mac. And he liked TwistedWave a lot, but there was one or two things missing for him. It was not very difficult to add, so I did it in the night, and the day after I sent him an update, and he was very happy and told everybody about it.
That's all it took.
Yeah.
You know, being having one big advocate for your product who's got a big mouthpiece in his business like Bo is a huge stepping off point. You know, it's great. And to this day, he'll say, and I've talked to him many times, I know Bo well, he says the second you retire, Thomas, is when he will retire.
Is that right?
So a lot of people would like you to retire so that opens up some space in the market, right?
Yeah, right.
Yes, exactly. But what I find interesting is I use Wavelab on my PC, which is the main computer in the studio. But when I'm on the road, I actually had Wavelab on my Mac, and I just found it really clunky. I just didn't like it at all. And I think it was through George. I'm not even sure. I'm pretty sure. Well, it must have been George. I heard him talking about TwistedWave, so I bought TwistedWave and downloaded it onto my laptop. And superficially, I just fell in love with the colour. And I was sold by this colour of the screen. I went, this is great. Red and purple. This is cool.
Design is a big deal.
It is.
Yeah, design is a big deal, especially for Mac users, because, one reason that, not for me particularly, but a lot of people use Mac is because they love the design. They love the way things look and feel. They like the product. So, the software feels and looks the way it does partly because it's designed on a Mac and partly because Thomas has good taste.
Maybe I have good taste, but I'm not an artist, so I'm glad you find it looks good.
Well, it does look very good, and I like it.
Me too.
It's got my favourite colours, purple and red. You can't get better than that. Now, I know, George, you've been online before we got on to this interview, and you've grabbed a few questions from a few punters on Facebook.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a pretty vibrant user group on Facebook called the TwistedWave VO user group. Too bad the word VO is in there, because really anybody that uses TwistedWave could use this, but it's a great community. But anyway, right before we started taping, I said, hey, anybody want to ask any questions? And sure enough, I got a bunch of them. Paul Stefano, who I know quite well, his two questions are, will it run on Windows ever, and will there ever be an Android version?
I won't say never, but I can't promise anything, I'm sorry.
Sure. I know there's some major barriers to developing a program to be cross-platform running on Mac and Windows. Is that something you've even considered, or is it so much work that it's just not worth it at this time?
It would be more work, and I like working on my Mac.
Sure, exactly. I see a lot of apps that run on, because there's a Mac version and there's an iOS version for people that don't know. Do you see it being an easier road to porting it to Android?
I'm not sure it would be easier. Porting it to iOS was very easy because iOS and macOS are very similar.
They're even making tools now that allow you to develop an app on iOS that can then run on Mac. So that will be a thing where you just literally make one app and it runs on both. That's going to happen.
But most of the code is already shared between the Mac and the iOS version. I only had to do the user interface. So porting it from one platform to the other was not a lot of work.
That makes sense. I'll say that, and I'm trying hard to not come off as a fanboy, but I'm clearly a fanboy, right? But I'll say this, like, what I love about the way you develop the software, Thomas, is that you're not succumb to what we call feature creep. Mm-hmm. So you're not always adding new bells and whistles, new tools, new functions, new this, new that. The software is functionally almost identical to what it was in 2007. In fact, I have tutorials that I produced, I think, in 2008, and I will still send out the link to people who are getting started for free. I'll just say, these are old, they're free, watch these tutorials because they still are relevant. And I love that about TwistedWave. It's almost like Pro Tools is obviously far more complicated, but the version from 10 years ago and the version now are almost the same for the most part. Like, you can get around on either one. And I think that's a brilliant way to think about your software design. Bravo for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. One reason is because when I want to add a feature, every time I have to think, is it going to make it more difficult or not? Another reason is that I've been very busy with TwistedWave Online. That's why I have not added as many features as I wanted. There are a couple of features that would be very nice on TwistedWave. Maybe someday they will come.
Can you allude to those features?
There are a couple of features I had in mind. One would be to draw an envelope to change the volume of the wave.
Sure.
And I could also use this same automation, this same envelope to automate parameters from plugins. Maybe this is useful for musicians. And one thing that is asked very often is to make a TwistedWave multitrack.
Right.
That would be, to me, it just takes it into a different category altogether.
To me, I always explain this to people, and don't take this wrong, but I say TwistedWave is not a DAW. It is a 2-track editor. And
Right.
Pro Tools and Uendo, those are digital audio workstations in the sense that they have a mixer and they have a more studio-esque environment to them compared to here's a, so to speak, sort of a DAT machine with extra capabilities, but not the whole 2-inch 24-track with a mixer kind of thing.
Right. I know I throw around the term DAW very loosely to describe like really any recording software, but yeah, it's probably a different category for sure. More questions. Here's another one. From Paul Stefano. I like this one. I'd also like to know your transition plan if you retire or sell the business. Like, what's going to happen if you go away? What if you've had enough of this? What's going to happen? Did you think about that?
I will not retire right now. So, and there is no plan to sell at the moment either. So I think you can rely on TwistedWave for many years to go.
Is it a subscription or is it a buyout or is it both?
It's a buyout. The TwistedWave Online is a subscription, but the iOS and macOS versions are $10 for iOS and $80 for Mac.
How do you just sort of software to software company, but how do you find the long term of buyout versus subscription as far as the ability to maintain new versions, make changes, where you have the problem where if I make this new change, how many people are going to, sort of in a sense make it worthwhile to put all those hours into making a change when possibly a lot of them are just going to keep on running Windows 7 with the old version or something?
Actually, I've never sold any upgrade. If you purchase the first version in 2007, you can still use it in 2019. Maybe it's not very good advice for other developers, but...
Right, exactly.
Long term, it does make that hard, actually. But users love that.
Yes.
Well, how's the uptake on the online version that you do sell a subscription to? How is that going?
It's going pretty well. It's going better and better every year. Mostly because people get a subscription and they forget about it.
Right, exactly. That is so true.
Yeah.
If I may ask, is this? You're a software developer,
Yeah.
so are you sort of a gun for hire? Do you work for other people? Do you work for a company? Do you only work for yourself?
No, I only work for myself.
But do you do consulting on other projects, or does TwistedWave take all the time?
TwistedWave takes all the time.
Great.
Thanks to the update schedule of web browsers and
Tell me about
and
it.
Mac OS,
Yeah.
right? Just trying to keep up with Apple's development schedule alone is probably a full-time job.
No, I don't have much trouble with macOS updates.
But you're one of the
Some of the
few.
security updates are pretty. Some of the security updates are pretty annoying. Actually, they really try to get
What
in the
kind
way.
of issues have you dealt with preparing your software for Catalina?
Maybe there was one or two minor bugs. I don't remember. Nothing dreadful.
Actually, with I've noticed with Isotope as a plugin, if I use it on Wavelab, it makes Wavelab crash. Do you have a similar issue when somebody uses any of the Isotope plugins on TwistedWave?
I don't know about Isotope in particular, but some plugins crash and it crashes the host. A couple of years ago, when Apple released iOS 9, it was possible to publish audio unit extensions on the App Store. And these audio unit extensions, now it's also possible to develop audio unit version 3 on macOS. And what is great about them is that when they crash, they don't crash the host. Most of the crash logs I get for TwistedWave is when an audio unit crashes. And if all the audio units upgrade to audio unit version 3, they won't crash TwistedWave anymore.
when you said Mac OS 9, did you mean 10.9?
No, it was iOS 9. iOS 9.
Oh, iOS. Okay.
And then the following release of macOS integrated the possibility to have audio units free.
Well, it's interesting with plugins, though. I use a Waves plugin on TwistedWave just so I can kind of try and emulate what I've got here. And I have no issues whatsoever with TwistedWave. But I haven't tried Isotope with TwistedWave, but I do know that Isotope, as I mentioned before, does make Steinberg Wavelab crash, which is really annoying.
Oh man, I have tons of clients on Isotope on TwistedWave. I mean, those two are like a match made in heaven.
Oh, perfect.
I mean, I've got a lot of people using Isotope RX7 and all the different RXs on TwistedWave. I've used RX versions since version 3 or 4 and never had... Actually, RX2, I think, is when I first started trying to use it. And yeah, it's been rock solid. The only problems I ever see with TwistedWave are just either new problems that crop up from OS updates or occasional hardware glitching, like dropouts and clicks. Thomas, I think it's really interesting because I've more than once I've said, hey, I'm having this issue, a client's having this problem. And then you'll say, oh, here's an update. And he'll push an update like sometimes the same day or the next day and he'll say, try this. And it almost always fixes the problem. I don't even understand how you can do that. It kind of blows my mind.
Well, if I can reproduce the issue and if it's not too difficult to fix, I try to do it very fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. I mean, it really makes what you guys do or what you do just so unique in that your ability to respond to issues quickly is certainly a big deal.
Yeah.
The key is reproducing the issue. It's so hard in software. I'm getting this crash, and then you try it out and it doesn't work. It's like that's the nightmare because now you can't. You have to go back to the person and say, I'm not seeing the same problem. So now we have to find out what's unique between your system and my test system to see what is the the cause. And people often don't want to go beyond just emailing in the complaint.
Right.
Usually find
there is a module in TwistedWave that will send the crash logs back to me, so it's very helpful to see why TwistedWave crashes, and it helps me a lot to fix the problems.
But there's so many variables when you're talking about things like that. It could be some really random thing that you've actually got on your computer. There could be another application buried somewhere that you've even forgotten about. It's sitting in the background.
It's usually plugins. It's usually plugins or hardware. The audio hardware or some, whatever it might be for us, an AAX or a VST or an AU plugin. But sometimes plugins, clash heads together. And probably actually more often than plugins, it's some strange thing with an audio driver that upsets the software.
There's another question from the TwistedWave group, a guy named Matt Rawlings. He says, are there any plans for time compression expansion?
You can already do time compression and expansion with TwistedWave.
Maybe he's talking about the iOS version. I don't know.
You can also do it on iOS. And you can also do it in TwistedWave Online.
Okay, it's on Mac and iOS. Oh, there you go. It's on all 3 platforms.
Yes.
What's in the time stretch module, actually, there's a separate mode that it runs. So is that like a separate algorithm?
ZTX algorithm?
Yeah.
Yes, it used to be called Dirac. It's an algorithm that I have licensed to use with TwistedWave, and is supposed to be of much better quality than the time compression algorithm provided by Apple.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It definitely is better. Of all the feature requests, obviously the ones you're getting that are popular, like multi-track, what is something that made the biggest impression on the users when it came out? I have my ideas, but what's one feature that you added that got the most attention? Well,
recently there was a punch-in recording. I know you've asked me for that for many, many years.
Yeah. Was that very difficult to implement?
No, it was not very difficult. But when I think about a feature, I always think it will be much more difficult than it ends up. So I delay it, and when I start working on it, 1 week later, I'm done, and it was not much after all.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's like my daughter cleaning her room.
Right.
Don't even go
The
there.
anticipation and the anxiety of the idea of cleaning the room is far worse than the actual process.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the punch-in destructive?
I guess it is. You can undo, but what do you mean destructive?
So if you're creating a file, and if you punch in the middle of the file, and then you hit stop, and then you say, "Oh, I didn't like that," you can undo that.
Yes.
I assume if you do 2 more moves, can you undo 3 moves past, or is it now
Yes, there is
cooked?
unlimited undo in TwistedWave.
Okay.
When you save the file and reopen, you can't undo anymore.
Yeah, there's no session concept with TwistedWave. It's always writing to a WAV file, so to speak, correct?
It's writing to the WAV file when you save the file when you want to end your session.
See, that's also where it breaks from a DAW, where you have a session file and then you have all of its assets. Whereas the asset is the end goal, and that's that, and there is no session.
Yeah.
Right. That is definitely a distinct difference, like an EDL type
Right.
thing.
Which brings up a question I actually had. Do you have any plans for adding, so to speak, playlisting, so you can have multiple files? And related to that, has anybody ever asked you about using TwistedWave in a CD mastering context?
Maybe I had a couple of requests, but not many. Regarding undo and redo, in the iOS and TwistedWave Online, when you close the editor and you come back, you still have the undo. It's a difference with the macOS version.
Is the online version storing to the cloud? Do you have
Yes.
like cloud storage and you provide storage?
Yes. All the audio is stored on my servers. And when you copy, paste, apply effects, everything is done on the server. When you play audio, it's streamed in MP3 to the client.
Oh, wow. I always assumed it would be caching it and playing it locally, but it's actually over the,
No, it's
on the
not.
server.
Because if you lose the internet connection or close your browser or anything, all the audio has to be saved somewhere. So it's
This is why Source Connect now is so devastating if you close your recorder, because it's recording into the sandbox. And then if you close the browser, poof, your sandbox is gone.
Right.
if you record something with TwistedWave Online and then close the browser, you will have TwistedWave will keep all the audio until the moment you were disconnected.
So do you sell space? Do you have people that are just using terabytes of space on you, or?
I have 3 plans. I have a basic, advanced, and pro plan. The basic plan allows up to 10 hours of storage.
It's just mono and stereo, correct? Or is there, say, surround like 5.1 or any?
You can load and work with more channels, but there is not much support for it in TwistedWave Online yet. You can't select individual channels like you can do in the macOS version.
Yeah, on the Mac OS, you can record as many channels. Can't you record as many channels as you have inputs on TwistedWave for Mac?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
So it just makes a giant polywave?
Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
Is there any support for timecode?
I think there is one metadata field where I read the timecode, but there is not much support.
You can change the time counter. So, like, if you are a voice actor and they say, "Hey, will you shave 2 frames off that read?" You can set the time display from time to SMPTE.
You can.
And to say 2997 SMPTE, and then you'll see the frames, which is super useful for people doing a ton of like phone. Yeah, they're getting phone patched, and they do the read. They're like, "Can you shave off 2 frames?" And it's like, what the hell do you mean? Well, if you change that display from time to SMPTE, you can do that. It's really easy.
But if there was like you couldn't burn timecode, like a timestamp into the wave file if it was
TwistedWave can read this and will show the time starting at the timestamp that is in the metadata.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really cool. And when you make a marker in TwistedWave, that marker is embedded in the metadata of the WAV file. So like if you open that in SoundForge, like another 2-track editor, it will show up.
Where does it use its timecode input from? Is it coming from audio or from MIDI, or how does it get its timecode input?
From the metadata, I think there is a metadata field.
So it's something that you put in manually. You say, this is the timestamp I want it to have.
Now, when I open the file, there is a metadata field that contains the timestamp. I think it's written by Pro Tools.
Right. So that's when you open up an existing WAV file, you see the timestamp, right?
Yes.
So if someone wanted to use this as a field recorder, there's no way to take running timecode and associate it with a given wave recording file from TwistedWave.
How close are we to having a stacks type functionality in the iOS version?
Plugin stacks.
Even if it's just using only the native plugins.
Yes.
Like, basically presets. Like people actually hire me to make presets on the iOS version, which really all I'm doing is setting everything, sending them screenshots, saying, here's my settings, do this. And then, that works reasonably well. But can we please have stats?
This is going to turn into a request session.
Yeah, I know. I can't help it.
I will keep it in mind.
Okay, thank you.
No promises.
That's my only Christmas wish.
Okay.
Especially now I'm an iPhone user, finally. I've been using iPads forever, but I have an iPhone 11, so I'm using more and more features on it, and I would love to be able to do that. That would be fantastic.
Are the plugins real time? Do they burn straight to the file, or do you have to record and then sort of process the plugins?
You record and then you process the plugins.
Is there a possibility of doing just real time right through the plugins?
Ooh, I like that. Destructive processing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No.
I think Thomas is actually.
We're making work
I think
for him.
Thomas is doing the code as we speak.
I know, right?
In his head, he's going tick, 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 tick.
In what? Why would this be useful?
Yes. Why would that be useful, Robert? Please tell all of us.
Time saving mainly. Sometimes you just have something that you're always running through constantly, and so you just want to record. Like a lot of music engineers, they have, for instance, their favorite outboard gear, and they always record straight through that. And so part of their sound is the compression, is the EQ, is the stack that George makes, and so they really don't have any use for the raw file. They're always delivering. They're always using the processed file.
Yep.
Okay.
So it just removes a step.
Yeah, maybe someday.
Yeah, that would be pretty clever. If they had a preference in the software, which is preload this stack and apply to my recording, with a warning, this is permanent. This is not something you can undo. But that would be a very clever little addition. This is something that, again, is the domain of multi-track DAWs, Reaper and Pro Tools. But if the code required to do something like that isn't like more than a few hours or so, it could be a pretty amazing little feature add-on.
Yeah, actually the domain of Reaper, but not Pro Tools. To do that in Pro Tools, you have to, you can, but you got to pass from one channel to the other.
You have to be a hacker. Yeah, you have to really know Pro Tools.
Yeah, you have to pass it from an aux channel to a record channel.
Right.
Whereas Reaper will literally record the output of the channel.
Yeah, there's a pre-record effects
or a post
channel. Yeah, there's both.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
But it's funny when you compare TwistedWave to Reaper. It's like those are two applications that sit in that very affordable and very powerful for what they do realm. And Reaper is the extreme of complexity and power, whereas TwistedWave is more the extreme of simplicity and here's what we want it to do, period, and don't let all the features get in the way.
Yeah.
I agree.
But I do like that idea of having the sort of the plug-in at the beginning, so you actually set it as soon as you hit record, it's already processed as everything goes down to tape. That would be really handy, I must admit.
Do you have an option to go down to tape?
Yes, that's right. The tape recorder's a bit heavy, but
specifically.
You're dating yourself. I do love, this is an example of what Thomas will do occasionally. Like if there is a feature that you think of that he can do very easily, like quickly, he's been known to do it. Like, like Bo, like he said, Bo early on gave him some requests. And recently, there was one thing that it's always been this way and I just dealt with it, but just realized it would make some people's lives a little easier, which was after you apply a stack, maybe you don't want to close the stack window. So you might just apply the processing. And then if you hit play, you would hear the processed audio on, and then you'd also hear the stack preview, right? So you'd hear it basically double processed, which confused people from time to time. So I asked Thomas, hey, can you just make it so after you hit apply, it clicks the bypass button? And he did.
I haven't. I obviously haven't updated
helpful.
because I have that issue, I must admit.
Right. Yeah, the new version 1.22.2. Is that what it is? 22.2?
Yeah, the current is 22.2, yes.
Yeah. I need to update.
Yeah, that's in there, and it's a little thing. Like, if you just hit apply and close, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. But if you leave that window open and click apply, it will now bypass. And I do a lot of setting up processing for other people, and of course, audiobook mastering. You're always leaving that window open, and so that's it's just a little thing. But man, does it make a big difference? Maybe you're doing a lot of files.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's all one continuous file. So when you apply a stack, do you apply it to the whole file, or can you apply it to a highlighted section?
Yeah, you can apply it to the selection or to the whole file.
And then once the selection's applied, do you have any way of knowing that section was processed, or you just have to remember in your own sort of log in your brain?
You have to remember, or you can place markers. You press M and you have a marker at the beginning and the end of the selection.
Well, here's the only program that I know of where when you make markers, they actually can be used as selection boundaries, which to me is super helpful. I can set an in-point and an output marker, double-click in between, and that's my selection.
No, you can do that in Pro Tools.
Pro Tools has that function? Okay, good.
Sure,
because that's really useful.
Yeah, you can select between markers.
Yeah, a lot of the programs can't do that in that way. And it just, one thing I do a lot, Thomas, is I'll have people that are dyed-in-the-wool Pro Tools users, but they're not producers. They're just voice actors. And I'll sit down with them and I'll say, okay, what is it that you do every day on your keyboard? Show me the keyboard shortcuts. And they'll say, well, I hit command bracket to this and zoom in, zoom out. And I'll be like, okay. And then I'll go to TwistedWave and I'll make the same exact shortcut. And they're blown away that they can replicate the same keyboard shortcuts.
It's funny. Pro Tools is the only
huge.
company that has not had to do that, because everyone tries to make Pro Tools shortcuts into Nuendo or into whatever app it is.
Yeah, they're the 800-pound gorilla.
Right, everyone's trying to
else
conform.
is
Conforming
to Pro Tools.
It's funny because you mentioned command bracket, and command bracket is like the old way of zooming in Pro Tools. There's now a single key. But I still use, I've been using Pro Tools for so long, I'm still using all these key commands that, aren't really remembered by most users anymore. But
that's the thing. It's muscle memory.
Exactly.
When you're trained on operating something and the foundational way that thing functions changes, it's terrible. When Apple, this is one thing I don't like about Apple software from Apple, is they will just throw the baby out with the bathwater. They will just completely change the interface on something.
Do you want to know the one that drove me the most nuts on Apple? Was when they made the scroll down, the swipe up, when it used to be the swipe down.
Oh, man. That's the first feature I turn off, natural scroll direction. I turn that off immediately. I hate that. I'm still to this day, I can't, I have to help other people, so I have to just turn my brain around for other users. But boy, that's one of those things. Thomas, one last thing. I'm going to make one last wish before we let you go. And this does relate to the Pro Tools users. Something that I've been shown by a few Pro Tools users is the way that they edit very quickly is what they do is they'll edit ahead of the playhead. So the playhead's rolling along, but they're looking at, say, the next breath or something else that they want to get rid of. They'll select and delete or select and mute or whatever they're doing while the playhead is playing. Could you possibly add a mode where it just says playhead, selection does not follow, or playhead does not follow selection? Would that be hard to do?
So you can cut the breath before the playhead reaches the breath?
Correct. So when the playhead's rolling, when you make a selection, it doesn't jump the playhead to the selection as it normally would. I see it being in the audio menu, and you could have a check called playhead follows selection.
Yeah, it's actually command. It's shift / in Pro Tools.
Shift / okay. Yeah, it would be in the audio menu, and there would be a checkbox next to an option called playhead follows selection or something, or cursor follows selection, and you could uncheck it.
Maybe.
He's writing.
I already had a lot of...
He's writing it down right now, folks.
I've had many feature requests since I launched TwistedWave 12 years ago, but I've never heard of this one.
This is so specific, really. It's really specific to Pro Tools users, but it's one of those things where I'm trying to get more and more people to ditch Pro Tools because they have so many technical issues and it's so complicated and expensive. And I'm just saying, if that one feature exists for them, they would be all in. But it is a niche thing. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not a big request.
I'll give you the killer feature, though, that's been gone for 20 years probably. Who remembers Sonic Solutions?
That's what I learned on in college.
Yeah, and do you remember that you could start recording, and then after about 3 minutes of recording, you could start editing the ongoing recording as it's recording?
Oh, my God, yes.
That was killer.
Yeah, you're right. I'm actually kind of blown away that a program from 20 years ago could even do that. Yeah, because that's basically like, if you think about when you're watching the football game and you see somebody editing and playing back the, the instant replay.
Yeah.
They're literally lifting video from a live recording and then editing it on the fly and playing it back.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, but also just if you're in a context where, because this is used a lot where you have a singular voice person who's doing everything on their own. But for an audio engineer recording somebody, and if it's like a really long form thing, and you're taking notes, and you're like, oh God, now I got to go back to all my notes, like breath here, oops, he did 2 takes there, and you got to roll back and remember all that stuff. Whereas instead of taking notes, it's just do it. Cut that out. Oh, he said it twice. Delete the second one. Delete the first one. Take out that breath. And it's just all happening while he's 2 paragraphs ahead of you.
All right, Thomas, we're going to interview you again in 6 months, and we want all these new features in there.
The pressure's on.
I will do my best.
No, I've got one question for you because I'm fascinated by the way you work. I had no idea you were in Paris for a start. So my question for you is, what is your day? How does your day play out?
He wakes up.
Yeah. Well, we hope so.
7 in the afternoon, 7 in the evening, as developers do, right?
I used to have very long days, but when I came back from Canada with 2 daughters, and now I have a third, it takes a lot of time out of my day. I bring my girls to school, and then I go to my office, and then I come back in the afternoon.
So you don't work from home? You have an office?
I used to work from home. I took an office about 1 year ago when I had a third daughter. But now I moved. I have a bigger home and I can work from home again. So I will stop renting my office and work from home.
Are you in central Paris, out of interest?
Yes, southwest, in the 16th arrondissement of Paris.
Oh, a friend of mine lives there. He lives on a boat on the Seine, actually.
Oh.
So it's kind of nice, except in winter. Not very nice.
I have a question, actually. Who, besides voiceovers, like who are your next 2 sort of biggest user groups, your use cases?
The next 2, I don't know, but I have many users. I have journalists, I have musicians, I have, I don't know, anybody can use it.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine the journalists are probably up there.
Yes.
Yeah, how about podcasters?
Yes, podcasters use it as well.
Like we are right now.
Right.
At least I am.
Yeah.
Right. Andrew, what will you be editing?
I'll be editing on. This sounds like an Uber ad. Uber Eats? What are you going to be eating tonight? I will edit on Steinberg Wavelab because that's my.
I used Wavelab way back in the day,
and you will use Wavelab to edit that out of this.
That's right.
Right.
But
we can't possibly say. Yeah.
But I use Wavelab on the big computer, and then I have TwistedWave on the Mac because my big computer's a PC. So.
Mm-hmm.
How is it licensed, by user, or is it just machine license, or can you move your license around? How does that work?
It's by user, so if you have 2 machines, you can install it on 2 machines with the same license.
Perfect.
He's very generous, Robert.
Clearly. I need to introduce you to the ILOC Corporation.
Oh, no.
Don't go there.
Please don't.
There is no plan.
Well, this has been great.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us on the Pro Audio Suite from beautiful Paris. In fact, I should leave you with a quote. There's an interesting quote from Jules Verne, who was seen dining on the Eiffel Tower. And someone asked him, why are you dining at the Eiffel Tower when you hate the Eiffel Tower so much? He said, because it's the only place in Paris where I can't see it.
Oh, my God, that's brilliant.
Supposedly a true quote from Jules Verne. But anyway, on that note, thank you, Thomas, and enjoy your evening in Paris.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
This show was mixed by Voodoo Sound. Edit by Andrew Peters, using Source Connect Now and Rode microphones, with technical support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe and like us.